Good morning. Welcome to the rededication of the Trooper George Hanna Memorial Bridge. On this cold, windy Saturday morning, as we do at every dedication, I'm going to start this off with a policeman's prayer. When I start my tour of duty, God, wherever crime may be, as I walk the darkened streets alone, let me be close to Thee. Please give me understanding with both the young and the old. Let me listen with attention until this story is told. Let me never make a judgment in a rash or callous way, but let me hold my patience. Let each being have his say. Lord of some dark and dreary night, I must give up my life. Lord, with your understanding and love, protect my children and my wife. Welcome members of the Hanna family, Mass State Police, retired John Cunningham, retired Lieutenant Colonel of the State Police, Billy Balcom, retired Sergeant with the State Police, elected officials, Carol Clough, Rick Jeanette, Charlie Hughes, Josh Oscroft, and Chief Mabadi. Thank you. I want to thank Ken Guinea, whose idea was for the new signs in this rededication. Ken will speak a little while later. I read an interview with Trooper Hanna's widow, Marilyn. I read George left Dean Junior College in 1966 to join the military. The article says the Air Force door was locked, so George joined the Navy for 4 years. After completing boot camp, George came home and married his childhood sweetheart. I didn't really get to know the Hanna family until after that evening of February 26, 1983. Marilyn tells the story of watching the 8:30 p.m. news and hearing a state trooper had been shot in Auburn. Marilyn knew right away. Like very few moments in people's lives, I remember where I was when I heard the news of Trooper Hanna being shot. I was with the Department of Corrections, a sergeant on the midnight shift, when the word came to me. I still remember the thousands of law enforcement personnel, including myself as a member of the DOC Honor Guard, lined up as far as you could see. To the family of George, the children, the 5 grandchildren, this is such a deserving tribute to the supreme sacrifice made by your husband, father, and grandfather. I am so honored to be a part of this service. Our first speaker today is a dear friend of mine for many years. I retired Lieutenant Colonel with the State Police, went through the academy with George many years ago. My good friend, retired Lieutenant Colonel John Jack Cunningham.
Thank you, Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, just a few words from the heart. I don't know what there is about a man after 30 years that makes him stay in your mind as a living, breathing, warm human being. It's just the complete quality of the man, his kindness, his dedication to duty. George forever will be not just a name on a plaque or a dedicated bridge, not just a great member of the thin blue line that defends the lives of the citizens of Massachusetts, but a dear friend. He wasn't just a dedicated family man, wonderful father, husband, and brother. He was one of the finest human beings it's ever been my pleasure to meet. I'm here today because he made such an impact on me personally and in representation of the 58th Recruit Training Troop, where he stood out. I think that this Commonwealth and the police community should look to George Hanna as a shining example of what was and what should always be held up as the standard for police officers in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. I just want to mention, I saw a good friend of mine last week for the first time. I think it's God's Way coming out of Roach Brothers. And that was Sergeant retired Bill Balcom, who did the investigation on George going into the academy. Thanks for being here, Sergeant Balcom. Always a pleasure, sir. As I said earlier, we're well represented by the Board of Selectmen, all five. At this time, unfortunately, outgoing member of the Board of Selectmen. I mean that from the heart. Good friend of the veterans, good friends of the community, as you can see with Carol being here this morning. Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Ms. Carol Clough.
Thank you, Paul. I'm standing here to represent the Natick Board of Selectmen, but as Mr. Crew already said, all five of us are here this morning to pay respects and to remember Trooper Hanna. It was 30 years ago this year that he lost his life in service of the people of Massachusetts and of our country in general. And although I did not know him because I didn't live in Massachusetts yet, I think perhaps that one of our members did. Mr. Mabarty, did you know Trooper Hanna?
Yes, I did.
Yes. And so I think it's good for us to all remember that all of our police officers, whether they're state troopers, local officers, MBTA officers, officers at universities and colleges, as we remember from this year, put their lives on the line every single day. It's fortunately, I'll say, rare that someone loses their life, but it does happen. And I'm going to digress just a little bit here and ask Mr. Mabarty if he'd like to come up and say just a few words. I didn't forewarn him because I didn't think of it until right before I walked up here, because he knew Trooper Hanna. So I'd like him to represent the board in that way.
Thank you very much, and good morning. And my sincere condolences to the Hanna family. There's something you'll never ever get over, and always be in the memory. I was fortunate enough to go to Dean Junior College with Trooper Hanna. We were great friends before and then as well and after. And when I was on the police department in Natick, and Trooper Hanna would stop and see me on occasion, he'd see me on a detail or something, and we'd have a great talk and reminisce. He was truly an extraordinary person. He was the embodiment of the state police, and it was my fortune to be able to consider him a true friend. I was here when they had his the funeral for Trooper Hanna, and it was probably the most impressive show of the dedication and honor and the respect they had for a person of his caliber. And I thank you very much for allowing me to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Our next speaker is a friend of the Hanna family, who's involved in some of the other memorials around town, Town Hall. My YMCA is dedicated, the pool is dedicated to Trooper George Hanna. His father swam there almost every day with Sergeant Balcom, actually. So, next speaker is my friend, Mr. Dave Casey.
Thank you, Paul. It's hard to believe it's been 30 years since this tragedy. Just after the tragedy, I had three choices that I did to keep George Hanna's memory going forever and ever. the bronze plaque in the Natick Town Hall, there was some Trooper George L. Hanna, that was approved by the town of Natick. This bridge that we're standing on was done in 1990. Believe it or not, some would say that this is the bridge that George Hanna and I raised a lot of cane on. That's off the record. And the third was Dean Junior College back in 1997. So there's three consecutives. The first plaque in 1984, a year after the tragedy. And then this bridge in 1990 at Dean Junior College. I like to say to everyone here from my heart, may the memories of George Hanna will live with all of us from this day forward. And a new generation of people in Natick will come through this bridge and see this beautiful sign that the committee put up. And they'll question to who George Hanna really was and what happened on that fateful Saturday night in Auburn over 30 years ago.
Thank you, Dave. Next speaker is no stranger to the Natick community. He's done so many dedications during his tenure as an active veteran in this community. A very good friend of mine. We've shared a lot of activities together. And this individual was responsible for this rededication, the new signs that you'll see shortly. My good friend Sergeant Ken Gidney, Iraq War veteran.
Thank you, Paul. I'd like to thank everybody for showing up today on this cold December day. I really didn't prepare any speech other than something I wrote down yesterday afternoon knowing I had to speak today. But this rededication, as everybody knows, is 30 years ago that George L. Hanna Jr. lost his life over in Auburn. This dedication is based on, quite honestly, the relationship that I have with John Hanna. John and I have been friends for 3 or 4 years now, and he does a lot of helping with me and my veterans and doing the stuff that I do to escort veterans to the Natick hockey rink and so forth. But John and I have established a pretty good relationship over the last 4 years, and John, I greatly appreciate your friendship. A few things I did write down is that Trooper George L. Hanna was a state trooper for 9 years. At age 37, he was killed. He is the father of 3, a Debbie, Kim, and Michael. And I just want to say personally that I know that the kids love him and miss him so dearly, and that their lives were short. A very brave and dedicated man. As a lot of you know, there's a few Hannas that are policemen and state troopers, George Sr., George Jr., and John Hanna, who has 25 years as a state policeman. Basically, that's all I got. Like I said, I didn't come too prepared, but John, this dedication is about your brother. That's very true, but it's also the dedication of your family and what you bring to the town of Natick. You're serving and protecting all of us day in and day out. You're a strong man, and my heart goes out to you.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, boss. Next speaker, I met shortly after Trooper Hanna was killed in the line of duty. I was working for DUC. I was a sergeant, vice president of the state union. And this Trooper Hanna, Trooper John Hanna, his father, came to me and said, "You give my son a job with the state Department of Corrections." Remember that, John?
I do.
Right, so with my little bit of pull I had with the state, John's first job with the state was NCI Framingham, and here he is now, 25 years a state trooper. Consider John a friend, good family friend, and John, you're my personal speaker today, and again, our condolences, and this is a very, very fitting tribute to your brother. And I thank your brother for his service. And come on down, John. Trooper John Hanna.
Thank you, Paul. Paul's been also like a brother to me. Paul brought me into the prison when I was interested in being a corrections officer, and I went to Walpole to go through the process and went to the academy. And Paul's always in my heart. He's like a brother. I've seen him over the years at Gold's Gym and different places and different ceremonies. So I can only thank everyone. Ken Gidney. I knew him as when we were probably 10 or 12 years old, over off of Walnut Street. We were friends. Then we didn't see each other until about 4 or 5 years ago when we met up at Gold's Gym, and we got involved with each other, and we became again like brothers. We really bonded well. And also, I have a family friend, Dave Casey, who has been gone to every annual Hanna Award that they hold at the State House in Boston. And I also see, they call him Jack Cunningham over the years, and he's been a great guy and inspiration, as well as many others. Nick Mabadi, I've always admired him. I remember him giving me pep talks when he was a police officer when I was a teenager in Natick, keeping me on the straight line, hopefully. I also have a very wonderful wife, Melissa, who I was blessed to have met and have married, and been blessed with two boys, John Jr. and Nicholas. And anybody else I forget. Also, it was kind of a resurrection of my brother's spirit this year when Ken Gidney wanted to say thank you, which I never really want. I do what I do because I love to. I always like to go under the radar. But they started an annual George L. Hanna Memorial Motorcycle Ride. And the proceeds of the donations go to the State Police Association of Massachusetts Benevolent Fund and the 100 Club, which helps police officers who are killed or injured in the line of duty. With that, I hope if I've missed anything, I also want to thank the selectmen and my cousin Dennis Fosberg, who was a fireman who I always looked up to over the years also. And Mr. Balcom, I know my dad talked about him a lot, and it was an honor to meet you again today, sir. And with that, I think I've said enough. And I really, again, from my heart, I appreciate this, that they keep George's memory alive, and as Jack Cunningham and Nick Mabadi and even Paul Carew and everyone have said, if you knew my brother, he was something else. I always remembered him as he was a lot older than me. This is the last thing I'll say. He was a lot older than me. And I don't know if anyone ever remembers The Rifleman with Chuck Connors, but I always felt like he was like Chuck Connors and I was Mark McCain, because I always looked up to him, and he was always had some type of energy that if you knew him, you knew him for life. And I just wish the world could feel what he did, and I think it would be a better place. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, John. This time, we're going to pay the proper respects with taps, followed by the unveiling. All those pay proper respect by the hand salute. right, that now concludes our ceremony here. On behalf of the Hanna family, I thank you all for attending for this rededication of Trooper George Hanna Bridge. Thank you very much.